In my more than 40 years in this world, I have never once looked at gaming as something that ends. I have never once looked at gaming as something that I would ever have to put away with age, whether due to marriage, parenthood, work obligations, or anything else. Whenever anything in my life conflicted with gaming, gaming won. Some might call that irresponsible, but I've always taken particular care not to take on any responsibilities in the first place that could potentially create such conflicts. So it's not as if I'm derelict in any duty that I've been beholden to, I've just been diligent to keep myself out of those situations altogether. I have, however, envisioned all the ways that I might lose my appetite for continuing to support the industry. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, because it feels like I'm watching one possible scenario play out in real time. Friends, this is going to be more of a discussion topic than any kind of news or analysis, so I'm just going to say that right away. This is Little Akiba Games. I'm Patrick. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, so that might be a strange and frankly uncharacteristically grim way for me to start a video, but it's hard not to think like that at the moment. Companies throughout this industry, from platform holders to major publishers, are actively working to price people out, diminish ownership by steering toward an over-reliance on online services, and turn everything into a subscription that must be maintained in order to continue on gaming. This digital capitalist apocalypse was only one scenario that I envisioned when I considered things that might someday drive me and my wallet away from the industry. At one point, I remember a common belief that the entire industry might be trending toward VR as the default way to play, completely setting aside the value and convenience of just chilling on the couch with a JRPG. And this position was espoused by real people who genuinely found it boring to consider that we might still be gaming on TVs and monitors in the far-flung future of 2020. It was outlandish in hindsight, but actual conversations were had about it, and it did get me thinking that maybe there were enough idiots steering the ship to make it an eventual reality. I just bring this up to clarify that it has never been certain exactly what my inevitable disenchantment with the game industry might look like, despite my relative confidence in its arrival. Now, to be sure, we've had scares like what we're seeing now before, although the first instance of it wasn't coming from a place nearly credible enough to be taken seriously. Those of us of a certain age might recall a project called the Infinium Phantom, which was to be a wholly internet-dependent 6th-gen device with no physical media and DRM measures that would make de novo blush. The market predictably laughed Infinium out of existence and was even kind enough to help out the Phantom with its ironic name. It became such a laughingstock that it never did see the light of day, and got stuck in development hell for so long that it actually managed to get a slimline model without ever launching in the first place. That's impressive. This particular flavor of idiocy reared its head once again in 2013 with the build-up to the Xbox One launch under Don Matrick. The original concept of the Xbox One was crazy, tying the physical product you bought in stores to your account, completely disabling any resale market and undermining an otherwise objectively strong E3 showing that year, ultimately seeing Matrick and his unprecedented DRM policies give way to current alleged Xbox boss Phil Spencer after this anti-mic drop.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
I covered the Xbox One debacle both before and after at SmashPad, and after Microsoft learned a hard lesson that they were unable to overcome throughout the entirety of the 8th generation, I was hopeful that gamers were actually self-interested enough to circle the wagons against any similar practices in the future, no matter where those practices came from. The frogs in a pot theory implies that you can get away with just about anything as long as your build-up to it is gradual and unassuming enough. If you dump live frogs into a pot of boiling water, they'll act with the appropriate urgency and fight like hell to escape, and have a good chance of being successful. However, if you dump them in a pot of warm water and slowly raise the temperature to that same boil, they won't even notice they're being cooked until it's too late. Putting aside the depravity of why anyone would do that in the first place, I feel like that's exactly what has happened with the gaming market. Once Matrick paid the price for the Xbox One debacle, platform holders got really cordial really quickly about offering choice and control to the consumer, enacting policies that, on a surface level, should have remained the norm indefinitely. These intervening years saw games ship in an increasingly incomplete state, relying heavily on day one patches to get up to a satisfactory level of functionality, or in some cases to even function at all. Online patches became the preferred method of giving people any game content in excess of what a single Blu-ray could contain, where they would have once simply shipped on multiple discs. These were also the years that saw the industry widely adopt the practice of so-called games as a service, making games dependent on an online back-end even when they didn't necessarily have to from a strict game design standpoint. Instead of taking ownership of our games away from us in one fell swoop like the Infinium Phantom or the initial Xbox One concept would have, publishers moved toward a frogs-in-a-pot strategy, taking smaller liberties here and there, hoping we wouldn't notice the totality of it until it was too late. To quite an astonishing degree, it worked. These methods, piece by piece, created either true believers or at least a consumer base numb enough to not consider the long-term effects of these practices. You can't go on Twitter or Facebook much these days, or even YouTube comment sections for that matter, to lament the current state of physical and digital distribution without having someone go at you about it, telling you to get with the times or that it isn't that bad, simultaneously missing the point of why it's that much of a problem in the first place, and demonstrating it themselves. Nintendo's game keycards mark a sharp proliferation of a horrible practice that has been building up for years. Microsoft no longer ships their first-party Xbox software on physical media at all, key or otherwise. In the same breath, both are pushing to make $80 a normal accepted price for new release titles. While Sony has yet to announce their jump to $80, they did allow Microsoft to launch Doom: The Dark Ages on PlayStation 5 as a download-required title, with only the most unassuming, nigh-microscopic labeling imaginable pointing it out. If that wasn't bad enough, they also just recently declared their lack of commitment to cost stability on their PlayStation Plus service. Alarmingly, you have executives from Nintendo to Rockstar whispering the concept of cost per hour into the conversation in regard to software pricing. Typically, this is done to either tout the value proposition of games that are priced normally or defend games with price points that wander into more controversial territory. On a surface level, it isn't that egregious. In terms of hours played, you do tend to get more usage out of video games than you do something like buying a movie or even attending one in a theater. However, with the industry becoming more and more online dependent every day, this is not a simple discussion about value proposition of a purchased item. There's an underlying request for permission to have a more consequential discussion about the per-hour value of a video game altogether. If we allow the suits to normalize this kind of cost-per-hour talk, with gaming already as online dependent as it is, don't be surprised if the next discussion is about hourly rates and all the lovely baggage that comes with them, like overage charges. Don't say I didn't warn you. The infrastructure's already there for it. Stop it in its tracks by not even entertaining the topic. Now, while it's not too late for the market to correct, as noted previously, gamers do have a decent track record of beating the industry into submission when it gets out of line, those pushing for less consumer control and more maintenance-based business models have made enough headway in the last decade to make it worth charting out your exit strategy in case things keep trending in the direction they're currently headed. I, for one, have had mine in motion for the last couple of years, starting when I sold off the vast majority of my pre-8th gen library and went all in on the Nintendo Switch and cartridge-based retro, particularly imports. Of course, I value control in general more than I value physical in particular, and I have become more of a PC gamer in this time as well. Between emulation, see my experience with retro achievements for more on that, and a couple of PC marketplaces that are actually trustworthy. Digital can be done well, friends, and some people over on the PC side are already doing it. GOG has built their entire business on declaring war on DRM and keeping control of your investment entirely in your hands from the moment of purchase. And they get extra brownie points for their Dreamlist initiative that allows you to nominate games for special preservation consideration. Meanwhile, though Steam does have DRM and authentication, their whole identity is built on consistently maintaining access to content once purchased. Valve has earned a great deal of trust, acknowledging piracy as an answer to poor service and having already explored disabling authentication entirely in the event they are no longer able to maintain their marketplace, where console manufacturers will need to make explicit assurances in place of the plausible deniability they've hidden behind since venturing into the realm of digital marketplaces to begin with. Valve simply has a credibility that console manufacturers haven't earned yet. They haven't even tried to earn it. Shifting gears, the combination of a strong physical format and consistent delivery of a complete playable product out of the box is why the Nintendo Switch will forever be one of my all-time favorite consoles. And even the Switch 2, despite the compromised nature of its native library with game keycards, will have a measure of this where game cards are involved. The Switch is a vast vault of content from all generations of gaming, cartridge-based and built for preservation. Light maintenance may be needed, Make sure your games all see the inside of a console at least once every couple years until we know more. But both the quality of the library and the lastability of its physical media are built to stand the test of time. The Switch 2, meanwhile, remains the best way to play its predecessor's library, either through dedicated Switch 2 editions, other upgrade patches, or simply by passive performance improvements from the more advanced hardware. As time passes, the library of proper Switch 2 game cards will also come into its own, assuring that its own library is well worth investing in, albeit in a more limited capacity, at least as things stand now. With all of that in mind, I'm confident that I've laid a pretty strong foundation to make my retreat if the market becomes entirely inhospitable to ownership. And it's just a question of where I would put the money that I would no longer be spending on new platforms and releases. One system that could definitely use more love from me as much as anyone is Blaze's Evercade Versus. While it is primarily a retro-focused platform built on a foundation of arcade collections, it has seen some utility from modern indie developers, as well as becoming a home for some retro console collections, and it wouldn't take much doing for Blaze to turn it into an attractive, genuine alternative. A cartridge-based option for people who are sick to death of DRM, of games as a service, the constant threat of disc rot, out-of-control price points and budgets, and also all of the issues that are plaguing Nintendo right now, who are the usual escape from all that. I'm going to have to make a note to pick one up for myself in short order, no matter how things go elsewhere. Those of you who have been here for a while may also remember my investment in a Super Famicom and a PC Engine in the fall of 2023. I had to kind of back off of shopping for those systems after a while because of my renewed focus on building out my Switch library, which is also incidentally why there hasn't been a second installment of Digital Akiba just yet. Backing off of the modern mainstream gaming scene would be a great opportunity for me to revisit that, probably picking up a RetroTink scaler and moving the systems from my old college TV across the apartment over to my main gaming setup in the process. It's probably also high time I pick up a Genesis or Mega Drive, or just get my old CDX restored. The Genesis is the epicenter of modern retro game development right now, shaping up to have a busier 2025 than some years during its actual quote-unquote lifespan. The fact that its software pipeline is open and flowing right now is a pretty good signal that it's worth paying attention to as a legitimate alternative to the current market. With games like Affinity Sorrow, Space Hunter, Eartheon, and Drift and Rage in the pipeline, the Genesis looks amazing as it pushes 40. Winding all this down, I am always encouraging people to look at gaming as the ongoing masterpiece that it is, rather than merely the revolving door of things that will get shoved in your face if you walk into your local GameStop or Best Buy. The things I've talked about here just represent the tip of the iceberg, a vertical slice of places I'll personally be looking if my interest in the current mainstream market bottoms out altogether. Friends, when I rebranded the channel to Little Akiba Games 2 years ago, I picked an independent gaming shop as the motif for a very deliberate reason. There's just something about walking into a store that blends gaming's past and present together respectfully, sustaining access to as much of the history of the medium as possible, and surrounding yourself with like-minded gamers to discuss it all with. If we're not gathering in these places in 30 years to exchange in and play Switch 2 and PS5 games the same way we do with the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and PlayStation 2 today, what are we even doing all this for? The culture is just as important as the content, but the culture also relies on the content and how it is delivered to sustain itself. Now, with repair knowledge being as important as it is, maintaining hardware has become a lot easier than it once was, because more people are doing it. If you know someone who can recap a console, your old TurboGrafx 16 is even more bulletproof now than it was back in the day. I also like to think that someday we'll solve for disk rot somehow and save some of these disk-based platforms like the Saturn and PlayStation. It's the more recent stuff that presents some uncomfortable questions. What of the games that ship on game keycards or their disc-based equivalents on the PlayStation and Xbox? What of the games that ship in absolutely ruinous shape and rely on an online patch in order to even be functional? We can't just trust that companies are going to do the right thing and keep these online services running years or even decades after the software that they're built to support stop generating meaningful revenue. Obviously, step one is to boycott. Refuse to feed the problem, and thereby force the companies behind the problem to course correct before too much software is trapped on a medium that is ephemeral by nature. It's also important to look around, though. Take inventory. As the market fills up with things that can be taken away from you on a moment's notice, be sure to take note of and support the things that are built for you to keep. And if you think about this like I do, build your gaming future on them. What about all of you? If you also find current industry trends as distasteful as I do, what's your plan for future-proofing your gaming? Are there any alternative platforms in particular that you're looking into to get what would have been your Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox money? Maybe your backlog is already locked in and ready to stand the test of time. Let me know down in the comments and let's talk about it. As disheartening as recent news in the industry has been, there's also a lot of potential for things to get really interesting, and yes, even better from here. That's all for now. If you like this video, then please like, comment, share, and especially subscribe. Click the notification bell with the all option to know right away when the next video goes up, and absolutely do this with all of your favorite channels, even if mine isn't one of them, to make sure you're getting the best YouTube for you to use. I hope to see you back here next time at Little Akiba Games.